hold hands and close your eyes. It's midnight, and you're listening to the Ghost Story Guys. Welcome to the Ghost Story Guys. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Paul Bestel.
And this is the show where we talk about spooks, specters, and all the other things watching us from the shadows beyond the campfire. Some conversations only make sense after the sun has set, and this is most definitely one. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 130, and we're coming to you from that tiny mountain cabin you dream about, but can never quite reach. How are you, Paul?
I'm all right. I seem to be living in a potty-mouth paranormal paradise at the moment here in the UK, so strange things are afoot in Britain.
Yeah, I've seen at least one story of a spectral lady in white telling visiting tourists to fuck off. And as someone who lives in a heavily touristed area, I admire her business plan. I think she's got a winning strategy there, but there are more, you're saying?
Yes, there's a spate of them. There's one in Birmingham, which has a similar response to anybody.
Are we sure that's a ghost? Because my experience with Birmingham, that's just Birmingham.
Yeah. Unsurprisingly, there's a couple in Liverpool.
Sure.
And Scotland. So there's a lot of strange reports appearing about really rude ghosts. And I'm all for it. About time.
That's it, yep. Enough of this traditional English reserve. It's time to start telling the people to fuck off who deserve it.
Yeah, so. That's how close we are to the end game. Even the spirits have had enough now.
So I can only assume Boris will be visited by 3 ghosts in some coming evening?
Hopefully the ghost of Neville Chamberlain will be one of them.
Well, the spirits are restless over there in the UK, and again, I fully support them. I have been absolutely trash, so the less said about me, the better. My mental health has been absolute garbage. However, I am excited about something. One, about this great show of listener stories we got lined up, which includes our first Ghostline story. I think, yeah, it's the first Ghostline story that we're including in the main show because those used to go in the mini shows.
Yeah.
And so now, so we've got a great call from our listener, Lindsay, about a very, very close call. So that's very exciting stuff, and I'm looking forward to getting to that. But before we do, we are finally able to talk about something that we've been hinting at for about a month now, and that is the launch of a new part of the Ghost Story Guys family, the YouTube show In Search of Ghosts. That is hosted by Dr. Joseph Como, and Joseph is an associate professor of sociology, and he's been a patron of the show for a while now, and he and I chatted sort of throughout most of last year. He's already kind of an old hand at YouTube. He had a successful channel based on football, American football, and he's also very, very enthusiastic about ghosts. I know he's working on a book project that's percolating in the background. And so he's wanted to do this show, and it's really great stuff. Right now it looks like it's going to be monthly, but the first show is called The Ghost Who Wasn't Dead. And you'll find a link to that in our show notes. It's not hosted on our YouTube channel. It's hosted on Joseph's, on the In Search of Ghosts channel. But it's a really great look at what causes certain kinds of haunting. And I really love stuff like this, and I know you do too, things that kind of try and avoid the pitfalls that some of these conversations usually fall into. It avoids sort of accepting like certain things as self-evident truths and probing a little bit deeper. One thing in that video that I really appreciated was on a recent episode of a podcast you and I both listened to, the resident skeptic referred to the stone tape theory as having originated with the film The Stone Tape Theory, which was a UK film, and that's not the case. And that's something that Joseph talks about in this first video.
The film's by Nigel Neal, who is obviously more famous for bringing the world Quatermass.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't recommend In Search of Ghosts enough. Again, this is part of the Ghost Story Guys family. Paul and I are not directly involved in its creation, but over time, as the channel takes shape, we'll definitely stop by for things like live streams or special episodes, because again, we're both really passionate about exploring this topic and arriving at answers for some of these questions we have. There's nothing more appealing to me than a mystery, except for that mystery's resolution. And I think In Search of Ghosts is a great way to have those conversations. So again, you can check that out. We'll link it in the show notes, and we will be having an introductory live stream on Tuesday, March 1st at 7 p.m. Pacific time. We don't have a link to that yet, but when we do, we'll be posting that across our socials. And that will be Joseph and myself talking about the channel. And we're also going to be talking about the paranormal documentary, The House in Between, which both of us saw recently and found very interesting. And so, again, that's the live stream. We're calling that Weird Together. And that is on Tuesday, March 1st at 7 p.m. Pacific time to celebrate the launch of In Search of Ghosts and just talk about all things wonderful and weird. All right, so we have stories to get to and a particularly terrifying public service video that Paul showed me, which I absolutely have to put in the show.
Just doing my bit.
But first, we got to thank our patrons.
This one's for the patrons.
Patrons, you're the Donald Pleasance to our Michael Myers, which is to say, without you, we would be incomplete. Anyone who's seen Halloween Kills knows that is true. And so we want to thank all our patrons, of course, but we'd especially like to thank our latest patrons. They are Christine Buffin,
Elizabeth Gonzalez,
Forward,
Gally,
Grace Galvez,
Ivor Brown,
Jean,
Juan Carlos,
Lindsay,
Stephanie Gonzalez,
Zostash,
and Claire Eastwood.
Guys, I cannot tell you how much we appreciate your support. You allow us to do so much more with the show. You allow me to focus on the show full time. Without that, I wouldn't be able to do things like these live streams or the patron shows, and this show wouldn't exist. So thank you so, so much from the bottom of our terrible, terrible hearts. And if you listen to the end of the show, we'll tell you how to become a patron. We'll tell you about all the cool shit you get. But we will say, if you become a patron at $1 a month, you get ad-free episodes, and who doesn't like that? Let's face it, ads suck. And I'll be honest, if even half of the people who listen to the show, or even a quarter really, of the people who listen to the show signed up for the ad-free episodes, it would be a literally life-changing amount of money. So it's something to think about, because we would certainly appreciate it. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the most terrifying public service announcement you can possibly imagine, and our stories. Welcome back. As we said before the break, this episode we have another brilliant selection of listener stories. But before we get there, there's a couple little things we wanted to cover. First was a series of tweets that was sent to us by our patron Ella. And Ella is, I've mentioned her on the show before, she's someone I've had the great opportunity to meet in person when we were both in Los Angeles a few years ago. And she sent us a tweet from the host of your current favorite podcast, Paul, Morbid.
Yes, and it was quite odd because I'd actually listened to the episode where she mentioned this subject, and that made me chuckle because I love stories like this where kids freak adults out.
Yes. So the original tweet was from Elena Urquhart, who is one of the hosts of Morbid. And again, if you want the full story, probably best to listen to, it's the latest episode you just said?
Yes.
So she tweeted out about this, and she said, so my 2-year-old started laughing while I was cooking dinner. She said, "Mama, who is that big giant man?" And I said, "What? Where?" And she said, "Right there," and pointed behind me. Then she said she would draw him and drew this. I will link to her tweet in the show notes so you can actually see the illustration. But the reason we bring it up here is because a number of people then commented with their own terrifying child story. And we thought we'd share a selection of these with you guys, just because who doesn't love being scared by tiny children? Which is one of the reasons I don't have them, I might add. And I found out from my doctor that my vasectomy took. I had my test results back, so now I know for sure I'll never have terrifying children.
Well,
unless they're already out there.
Yeah, Alan Godfrey thought that, and then he got kidnapped by a UFO, and his wife got pregnant afterwards. So just be careful.
Well, I got nothing, except now I'm never going outside again. All right, so the first one I'll start with comes from Lily. And Lily replied to Alana saying, "My son used to freak out about the little men under the refrigerator that were going to steal our butter. After many sleepless nights, we left out a butter offering, and he didn't freak out anymore after that." And oh boy, that's got good folk energy all over it.
Yeah, brilliant. I love stuff like that. Because sometimes you just think, well, there's a bit more going on there than just somebody making something up, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've talked before about how we're not necessarily of the opinion that this is always just kids making shit up. And that does not sound like a kid just making shit up. Always just leave out the offering. Just in case.
And cross your fingers.
All right. You want to read the next one?
Yeah. Geesh, that's terrifying. My granddaughter was about 3 when she said she sees Serta Dirta in her bedroom window at night. We never got a good description because we didn't want to frighten her. But what the fuck was it? They moved a while. They moved a while after that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a quick Google around. That's not a name of anything. That's just one of those terrifying names that kids pull out of nowhere or seem to pull out of nowhere and inflict on you. Like, oh no, that's just Razorface. I'm sorry? Yeah, Razorface. Yeah. He comes at night from under the bed and he does a dance for me that he says is the dance of forever. He's so funny. We're burning this house down. Would you believe that I made a joke on Instagram? I posted a picture of this pound of butter that had 2 bites out of it. That the person said something to the effect of neither me or my wife did this, and the pound of butter has 2 bites out of it. And I made a joke in the caption, well, you have to burn the house down now. They removed it for incitement of violence and threatened to close the account.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy. I mean, there's what was it? A friend of mine put something on Facebook the other day, and it was a funny quip. And they got banned for 3 days.
Yeah, it's madness. I had a great joke about, I can't remember what it was about, but it was it was about Microsoft Word. Like trying to move something in Microsoft Word, and Microsoft Word tells you, I will kill everyone in this house. And it was hilarious because Microsoft Word is fucking trash. But I thought, I can't post it because those lunatics at the algorithm are ignoring, literal Nazis and coming after my stupid jokes, which are not actually directed at anyone.
Yeah, well, I remember famously having an episode on YouTube that was banned because of the name of the hotel.
What was the name of the hotel?
Fister.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Famous hotel in Milwaukee. And it got the episode pulled. I had to cut that whole section out and reload it.
So the entirety of Blood-Sucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh is on YouTube in its terrible entirety. Mm-hmm. That exists on there with every reprehensible site that had to offer. Mm-hmm. But the Fister Motel, that was a step too far for YouTube.
Apparently so, yeah. And I had to cut that whole section about the ghosts of the Fister Hotel out because it was the only thing I could possibly think that would even slightly cause an offence somewhere. And amazingly, the episode was fine after that.
Handing over control to the algorithms was a super good idea. We're doing well.
Yeah. So even challenging it, nothing. I challenged it. They upheld it. I challenged it again. They just said you can't challenge it anymore. So I just had to edit the episode. It was absolutely balmy.
I've had that with music. We'll have an artist give us permission to use their music or ask us in some cases to use their music. But obviously, usually it's CD Baby. CD Baby will make a copyright claim. And I mean, our channel's not monetized, but still, it's just a principle thing. You asked us to put your music in the show. And I've appealed saying, hey, man, your artist asked to be put in the show. And CD Baby just says no. Oh, okay.
How dare they do something with their artwork?
Right? Anyways.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes of YouTube and podcasting. All right. So our true crime podcast replied saying, my daughter would talk about her other mom from before. She also hates to sleep in her room because the aliens would wake her up wanting to play. This seems like Bestial territory to me. Which is not that you dress up as an alien in small children's bedrooms.
Yes, let's just clear that straight up.
The court ruled that did not happen.
I wear a lobster costume.
And it looks great on you.
It does. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, isn't there? We've got ghosts and aliens.
Well, they're both working for their Commander Bigfoot.
Well, I was going to say that's what's coming next. Get ready, Mum and Dad. My daughter used to have an imaginary friend called Ghoster. Used to have to set a place for him at the table for dinner and everything. I thought it was kind of sweet until she told me he had a huge hole in his chest. He went away after a few years.
Oh, man. Telling you, Paul, that vasectomy is looking better and better.
Yeah. And there's a lot of these kind of stories where kids describe their friends and they always... have you seen some of those drawings of kids what they claim to be imaginary friends, and some of them have like got their eyes missing and blood everywhere.
Oh yeah, and that's brutal Norm.
Yeah, perfectly normal.
Yeah, we have tea parties sometimes. He said a horse stepped in his mouth. Like, this is, kids accept weird shit, man. All right, so we have two more of these. This is from Kristen Schultz replying to Alana. She said, my mother had an invisible friend when he was 3 to 4 named Jaws. Pardon me. My brother had an invisible friend when he was 3 or 4 named Jaws. One time my mom left the kitchen and came back in and all the cabinets were open. All of them. He said Jaws did it.
I think that's my favourite, actually.
All right, and the last one.
My daughter has an imaginary friend that she told me lives in the mirror until night time. When my son was born and got older, he told me he could see him and plays with him too. And why not?
What the hell?
That's a good ghost, that. Not messing about, no favouritism. It'll play with any small child. A few years ago, Bored Panda did an article on things that children had said, like really weird things, and some of those were outstanding. Like, I think one of them was that somebody said, "Oh, my child was sat in the front room and then just stood up, started waving at the window and said, 'Hi, Auntie Peg,' and then the phone rang, and it was the hospital to say that Auntie Peg had just died."
Holy shit!
And there's loads of them. Like, Grandad told me to stop jumping on the bed. Grandad's been dead 7 years. They've never met Grandad.
Oh, man.
There's one about Gettysburg. Somebody took their 5-year-old son to Gettysburg and he kept correcting the tour guide because he was getting all the information wrong. And when they asked him how he knew, he said the soldier that was there kept telling him.
Oh, that gave me chills. That's great. Yeah,
I'll send you the link. We can put that in the show notes because there's some brilliant ones in that.
Absolutely. So, yeah, check the show notes for that.
Yes, let's give everyone nightmares. Well, I think if people think we've really scared them, I think we just need to ramp it up a bit and perhaps have a public service broadcast.
Oh, man. Yeah, you are absolutely right. My only hesitation about putting this in the show, Paul, is that anything we do afterward is going to pale in comparison. But I do think it is worth sharing. Do you want to set the stage?
Yes. So as a child in the UK, we were subjected often with terrifying public service films, which often did their job. But these would show children in a variety of dangerous situations, often dying, as we were gathered round the TV at school, being warned away from playing on railway tracks or trying to dig into a mine or run after a football or go swimming with a shark, those kind of situations.
Sure.
And there was the highest bar that could ever be set for a terrifying child public service announcement features the one and only Donald Pleasance, who is the spirit of the darkened water.
Is uniquely terrifying. The first time Paul, first off, I'm sorry, because we're all going to need therapy. And I will link to that in the show notes too. You really need to see the video because it just adds a whole other element to it. But I was saying to Paul after he first showed that to me today, Severin Films just released this massive box set of folk horror. It's got stuff like beautiful remasters of Penn Does Fen, Eyes of Fire, all that stuff. But that 90-second video was more frightening than anything in that box set. It's more frightening than anything that could possibly exist in a box.
Yeah, I think it was before he did Halloween, actually. I think that's from the early 70s.
Oh, man. Well, obviously, Michael Myers held no fear for him because he had seen into the abyss, and it was him.
Only sensible children frightened him.
I just figured it out, Paul. The entire Halloween franchise is the story of Michael Myers trying to get away from Donald Pleasance. In the words of all those true crime programs my wife loves, I just cracked the case wide open. All right. Well, though we cannot possibly frighten you to the degree to which that frightened me, we're sure going to try, because now it's time for our stories. Our first story comes from Cody. So this story begins with the purchase of our first house. My wife and I, we were engaged at the time, were searching for our first home when we found this cute little house built in 1936. This house had been vacant for 10 years following the death of the owner. During the open house, as my wife and I walked into the bedroom at the back of the home, we both felt uncomfortable, but were unaware that either of us had this feeling. Once we signed our offer paperwork and it had been accepted, the inspection period began. During this time, I spoke with the neighbors about the history of the home. They informed me about the passing of the little old lady 10 years ago in the back bedroom of the home. I called my wife immediately to share this information, and that's how we found out we both shared that sense of discomfort. Once we purchased the home, I moved in and began renovations while my then-fiancée continued to live with her parents. I would notice creaks and pops every night around the same time, but chalked it up to a cold home in winter. You know, since I'm a man and I don't believe in no ghost. I recall 2 unexplainable events and 2 vivid dreams, the first of which happened in week 1 of staying in the home. In this dream, I heard noises coming from the bedroom, and as I approached the door, it slammed shut on my face, with a little old lady's voice politely saying, "Get out of my house." I then declared this was my house, and reached for the knob, when the whole door began to shake violently, and the voice became hostile and loud. I ran to my room to arm myself, but once I reached the opening of the room, I saw an old lady clearly decomposing, greasy and floating. I then grabbed my gun, as if that would harm a ghost, and opened fire, and the ghost charged me and lifted me by my throat. The whole time she was saying, "Get out of my house!" It went from a meek woman's voice into a demonic, deep voice. I screamed, "By the name of Jesus, I command you to leave this place." I was then dropped, but at the very moment I woke up, as my bed was shaking like I had just jumped on it, leading me to believe I may have been elevated and dropped. Dream 2 started with me babysitting my niece and taking her to the car to leave, when she said she wanted to stay and play with Damien, this Paul in that lobster suit. I told her no one named Damien lived here. She then told me he lives in the attic, in the bedroom. Keep in mind that my wife was always complaining that there were footsteps in the attic, which I told her was impossible due to the design of the house. Well, back in Dreamland, I approached the room once again, and the attic hatch was open, and dust was falling. I heard a small, childlike voice say, "Let her play with me." I said no, and asked who was there. The childlike voice then began to transition, just like before, into a demonic voice growing louder and deeper as the house began to shake. This time, though, I was awakened by our dog jumping from the bed. The activity died down for the next year, until we decided to move. The 2 unexplained events happened within weeks of us selling, the first of which was at 5:30 a.m. as I began to get ready for work. My wife had gotten home late and had only been asleep for 3 to 4 hours and was out cold. While I was in the bathroom shaving, I heard a glass bowl shuffle in the cabinet. I thought this was strange and that maybe I woke her and she decided to wake up and start her day. I then asked, "Why are you up?" and I heard a woman's laugh, almost like my wife's, but not totally. I heard this laughter again just before I walked to the kitchen to find the lights off, no bowls out, and the bedroom door still shut. I opened the bedroom door and my wife was still out cold. I woke her to ask why she'd been in the kitchen, and she assured me that she had not. Finally, the last event happened when my wife and I were loading the moving truck. Our dogs were barking inside the home, but they're well behaved, And when they bark, we can often say no 2 or 3 times and they hush. We can often say no 2 or 3 times and they hush. Well, the dogs were barking like crazy inside, and clear as day we heard a lady's voice between the barks saying, no. They would not stop, and we both heard that no 7 or 8 times. Not sure if the spirit there doesn't like change and knew she was about to have a new roomie and decided to get active again, or who knows. It was pretty crazy, though. And Cody, thank you for sharing that, man. That was something else. I'd like to point out I made the, just in case our listeners don't know, I made the Damien joke because that is Paul's middle name. That is why he suddenly appeared in the room dancing in his lobster suit. I was waiting for you to turn your mic back on. I thought, oh no, he's restraining himself. That's very...
I'm showing good decorum.
I'm unaccustomed to this, so I wasn't quite sure what was happening. There is a real theme on this episode of things happening in attics. And that is another thing that, again, I am not sad that I don't have. I don't have a basement, I don't have an attic, and I'm much happier for it.
Yeah, my mum's got something that walks about in her attic.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever tried to narrow down what's happening or who it might be?
I've no idea, but you can clearly hear somebody walking about, and it isn't big enough for somebody to walk about in.
Fascinating.
And that's really good at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Shit, I was just talking to someone about this. They were telling me that they had, it's something going across their roof that was too heavy to be an animal. Couldn't be a raccoon. But it seemed to be on the ceiling, like actually on the roof of the house. Like someone was stomping across the roof of the house. And I've got friends who I've mentioned before on here. They live on the top floor of their apartment block. But sometimes they'll hear stomping footsteps above them.
Things like that are always quite interesting for me, especially when you know there's nobody up there. And you know there's no way anybody's going to be up there.
Yeah. So. Something I wanted to touch on, too, is the fact that Cody said, you know, he sort of used Jesus' name to break the connection in the dream, you know, between him and the specter he was seeing. And we have a story later that talks about this a little bit. It talks about this idea that it's some wisdom from someone's father basically saying you have to believe. More than anything, you have to believe that what you're saying will work. And it reminded me of you and me talking about something on a recent episode. We were talking about how there are just, you know, if a priest blesses a place and it doesn't do anything, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's more powerful. It may mean that you just got a shitty priest. Because not all priests, not all their faith is the same.
Absolutely. I think anybody who's seen Fright Night will see the power of belief. Our next entry is from Jason. My first recollection of the paranormal was when I was around 4 or 5. I would have the same dream weekly, and still do on occasion. In it, I'm sitting in the living room, watching television or playing with some random toy. Suddenly, a lady with no face appears between my family and me. I open my mouth to scream and nothing comes out. It's totally lucid. I know I'm dreaming, and I know if I scream I'll wake up. I always awake, totally paralysed, making a guttural sound. It feels like forever before I'm able to move. The next something, I didn't even think was strange at the time. I was maybe 10 or so. We had gone to visit my aunt and uncle in Conroe, a suburb of Houston. When we arrived, my older cousins were all playing hide and seek. They lived in an old 2-story house, so there were lots of nooks and crannies to hide in. At some point, my older cousin directed me to hide in a sort of coat closet that also housed the door to the attic. Thinking that if I went to the attic, they would never find me, I opened the door to see a crawl space leading to a large, unfinished attic. Inside, I found a young Hispanic boy. He was about my age and was leaning against the wall of the crawl space with his legs outstretched in front of him. I assumed I had found another boy who had the same idea for a hiding spot as I did. There were 5 cousins and lots of their friends playing, so I didn't know everyone. I sat down beside him and asked his name. He replied, Joe. I asked how he knew my family. He just shrugged his shoulders. He never said anything else until I began to climb out of the crawl space as I heard my dad calling me to go home. Joe looked at me and said, I like you. Can we be friends? I said that we could. When we got downstairs, I didn't see Joe, but it was time to leave. I told my dad about him on the way home. He said we could play next time we went to visit. I awoke that night to find Joe in my room, just standing there. I looked up and asked him how he got there. Again, he just shrugged and asked if I wanted to play. I said sure and started to show him my Hot Wheels collection. Soon my mum came in to see what I was doing awake. I told her I was playing with Joe. She looked at me and then left. My dad then came in and asked if this was the same Joe from my uncle's house. I told him it was, and he got a strange look on his face and asked me to come with him. We went outside and into the pasture behind our house. Dad asked me if Joe was there, so I looked behind me and said that he was. Dad then told me to stand behind him so that he was between Joe and I. That was the first moment I started to feel like something was off. My dad looked at Joe, although I knew he didn't see him, and said, "You can't be here. I need you to leave," or something to that effect. Joe looked at me and asked, "Where do I go?" I looked at my dad and told him what he said. Dad then looked around and pointed at an oak tree in the middle of the field and said, "You can stay in that tree." I shit you not, when I looked at him again, he was gone. When I was older, I asked my dad about it, how he knew it would work. He just told me that his mum had taught him and he didn't want to talk about it. He did tell me, however, if you find yourself in that position, you have to believe it's going to do what you say with every ounce of your being. Fast forward a few years, I was around 13 or so. We lived on a 100-acre ranch with a big hayfield in the back. The field was on a hill surrounded by timber. I was out hunting and walked into the opening of the field just as the sun was starting to set. About 50 yards from me, toward the middle of the field, was a young girl, dressed in white with long blonde hair. I called to her thinking it was a kid from one of the many deer camps behind our property who had gotten lost. She turned to look at me and then was gone. I ran as fast as I could back to our house. For the sake of brevity, I won't include all the other stories of being touched, hearing people talking, and seeing strange shadows or all the blinds in the house closing at once. My whole life it has been as if it was just drawn to me, to the point it didn't frighten me anymore, until about 4 years ago, when we moved to Lufkin. Everything just stopped, to the point I thought I'd just grown numb to it. Then we made a trip to Jefferson. I was doing a piece for the October issue of the magazine I work for. Jefferson is supposed to be one of the most haunted towns in Texas. While nothing happened to me, my wife, who is not a believer, had the sink turn on while she was doing her makeup and had a cell phone charger pulled from her hand. She still says she doesn't believe it, although she was visibly shaken. We then made the trip to China, where we stayed in a small retro motor inn. Each of the little bungalow-type rooms had a carport. It was around 10 at night. My wife had gone to bed, and I was under that carport, playing my guitar. My son called, so I leaned my guitar against the brick wall to talk to him. When I hung up, just as I was reaching for my instrument, a string broke. I thought that was odd and sat back. Normally the strings don't just break of their own accord. My guitar then began rolling down the wall, slowly as if something was spinning it. I then realised it was about to spin off the corner of the wall and I grabbed it before it tumbled to the concrete. I was shaken, but as I said before, this shit has been happening my whole life. I took my guitar and went inside to bed. I didn't want to tell my wife until morning because, let's face it, sometimes talking about it isn't better. I went to sleep and awoke paralysed, trying to scream. There was a dark figure standing by the door. I was wide awake and unable to move or get a sound out for a good 5 seconds, staring at this large, dark figure. Needless to say, after that, I sat up until morning. There's a lot going on there.
There is a lot going on there. Thank you for sharing that, Jason. I mean, where do we start?
I want to know if his dad's aware of what's going on. Why is he not teaching Jason how to protect himself?
That is a great question. I wonder if it was an accident that he pointed to an oak tree. Because I'm pretty sure, it's an oak tree. And of course, you and I both know oaks are, very important in folklore as sort of entry points and exit points and places where spirits dwell. So did he know that that's what oak trees could do? Did he know that was a safe place to send this boy, or was it just random chance? Jason, if you have any more information, We would love to know.
Is that a tradition in the States as well as it is over here? Because obviously it's quite well known, obviously in our folklore, that oak trees have a portal type reputation.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. Is this a belief that has also persisted in North America? Does it exist outside of that sort of, sort of the UK folklore? I guess it'd be interesting to know if it does, right? Because it's always fascinating when you see these common threads in folklore across different places.
Mm. And also, whoever bought that house, are they aware they've got a haunted tree?
Also this. I wonder if there are a lot of haunted trees out there. And frankly, I wonder if a lot of weird shit that happens that we write off to, man, this house just keeps falling apart, or man, I can't get anything to grow in my garden. I wonder how much of that is related to things that we just can't see, or we've lost the ability to perceive over time. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like this vestigial awareness, but is still part of this natural order that doesn't go away simply because we're not paying attention to it.
Mm. Very true. And I think often as well, it's unusual for us as adults where we often hear stories from children, as we were starting at the beginning of this segment, and also as Jason touches on there. You know, if we walked into a crawl space or wherever, and then suddenly there's a boy in there, we'd like, where the hell has he come from? Who is this? And he's like, oh, hello. How are you? I'm all right. No.
Little kid's like, are you here with my friend Prince Andrew?
Who I never met.
Never.
But here's £12 million. Thank you.
How kind.
I love the innocence that often is apparent in stories where people look back as experiences that they had as a child, that they often take things very matter of fact and in their stride, whereas adults, as Jason's father, he was like, no, we're not having this, right? We're going to sort this out. We're going to sort this out right now.
Yeah, I was thinking that when he woke up to find Joe in his room, and Joe just says, you know, when he asks him, how'd you get here? He just shrugs. And then Joe asks if he wants to play, and the kid's like, fuck it. Yeah, let's make this happen. I mean, I love that. I wish I was that accepting of strange things appearing in my bedroom, because then maybe I'd be able to react better.
It's the acceptance as a child. Is it naivety? Or is it, because I find it odd sometimes that when we speak about some of these experiences, you know, we're not talking about toddlers, we're talking about children that are clearly quite aware of their surroundings and what's going on in the world. And yet, often, they seem to just accept these strange occurrences or these magical appearances without a thought, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. But, you know, if a strange boy turned up in your bedroom as a child, you would think as an adult, you'd be thinking, how the hell's he got in here? Not, hey, here's my Hot Wheels collection.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's because Nikki won't let me keep the Hot Wheels in the bedroom anymore. But I tried to tell her it was a sex thing. She said, I don't know. She says a lot of stuff. I wasn't listening. Anyways. Well, I wonder if that goes back though to things we've said about kids losing their paranormal awareness because they don't necessarily understand the rules, quote, rules of reality that adults kind of have beat into them.
Mm.
You know, I know skeptics I know skeptics very much poo-poo this notion of subjective reality, but I do sometimes wonder if there is something to it, right? You know, if you're told enough, if the sense which allows you to see such things is very fragile, you know, again, I described it as being vestigial in a way. So something that is not very strong in you, if it can be turned off, you know, if it's that sort of innate sense, it can be turned off by shaming, then maybe that can happen. You tell a kid enough, no, you didn't see that. Okay, well, then I'm not seeing it. And then you just start to exclude it from your worldview. I don't know. It's so subjective, right? It's so hard to pin down. But I think about that time I saw those giant shadow legs in Revelstoke. And I saw them. But as soon as I realized consciously that what I was seeing didn't make any sense, they were gone. I couldn't see them anymore. Mm. You know, it's almost like a filter comes over to just sort of removes them from your awareness.
Mm. I think there's a lot to do with the reality of growing up that alters people's perceptions as well. And as you say, I don't think it's necessarily shame. I think often sometimes it's that they don't want to be outed as the weirdo that sees things. Then we get to about 30 and we just don't give a shit anymore.
Well, we're already out so far on the outside that it just doesn't matter.
I like being in the margins.
I've met way cooler people there.
Very true.
They got better drugs too. This story comes from Brody. It was the first period of the second day of my freshman year, and the intercom beckoned the whole class to the auditorium. We all sat down as the principal spouted a speech about how these 4 years will go by quicker than any in our lives, and that we should cherish them as the final years of our childhood. I'd been excited for high school, so I was paying close attention when I noticed what looked like a thin puff of smoke, about double the size of a basketball, floating quickly across the stage behind our principal, before disappearing at the opposite end of the stage. It almost evaporated, in a way. I wasn't initially creeped out by it and just kept watching. Later, I asked my friends I was sitting next to if he'd seen it, and he hadn't. This is when I realized there wasn't anything to make smoke on the stage, and nothing to blow smoke across the stage, even if there had been. The way it moved seemed to have intention, but it wasn't very breeze-like. The story's starting to drag on, so I'll stop, but it definitely messed me up for about a week. Not because it scared me, per se, but because I couldn't explain it. I pray I never have an intense paranormal experience, because I will never sleep again. So, after sending and this is actually a combination of 2 emails. So, after sending my previous email, I got to talking about the paranormal with my dad, who then told me this story. My dad is the chief of police in our town, so he frequently works nights patrolling around town, and the officers take turns patrolling the outskirts of the city. On this particular night, it was my father's turn. Part of the job is checking on the city dump to make sure people aren't dumping trash without paying the required fee, and walking the graveyard to make sure there are no vandals. My dad has always struck me as a very rational, level-headed man, so the fact that this stuck out to him as paranormal makes me believe him. So, my dad pulls up to the graveyard and starts walking towards the tree line in the back. It doesn't see anything. So he starts to walk beside the tree line when he notices an elderly man with a lantern. I know that sounds stereotypical, but stay with me. This man is walking between headstones. My dad's wondering what he was doing there so late, so he asks him if he needs a ride into town, since to get into town you'd have to walk down the highway, and there are no other vehicles parked nearby. The man didn't seem to hear him, so we started to walk closer. As he was walking, he put his head down for a quick moment to watch his feet, and when he brought it back up, the man was gone. No trace of his lantern light anywhere. My dad, understandably, was creeped out. He headed back to his car, deciding then and there not to tell any of the other officers for fear of sounding crazy. He told me they would think he was messing with them anyways, since they all had to go there so frequently at night. Fast forward about 2 weeks or so, and one of the officers asks my dad if he had seen an old man with a lantern at the graveyard. They got to talking, and as it turns out, most of all the officers had seen him. And Brody, thank you so much for sending that in. Just as a reminder, I am very slowly putting together law enforcement stories for an eventual book. So if anyone else has stories from themselves or family who are involved in law enforcement, shoot me an email at ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. I know I talked about this months of last year, I think. I've done very little with it, but it is something I do intend to do. Just the way my brain works, I hyper-focus on something, and then I lose interest for a long time, then I come back to it. So just putting the word out there for when I eventually come back to it, I will need more stories. Paul, what do you think of that one?
Very creepy. I'm always a big believer in reports by police officers, especially. I've done a couple of shows on.
I was going to say you have indeed.
UK police officers, and some of them are fantastic. And obviously, one of Sheffield's most famous incidents hit the headlines because of what happened to the 2 police officers who were honest enough to admit that they too had been scared out of their wits by a creepy monster or ghoul or ghost or whatever it was running about Stocksbridge bypass late at night.
Okay, so you got to tell us a little bit about that story, because I don't know that one.
So, Stocksbridge bypass was a road that was built at the end of the 1980s to alleviate the traffic that went through the old steel town of Stocksbridge, which is on the edge of the Peak District, but it's to the north of Sheffield. And so they had built the bypass, and obviously at that period of time there was a lot of poverty in the area because it was after the miners' strike and the steelworks had shut down. So they had to have security guards on to protect the building materials and make sure nothing got nicked and stuff like that. And these 2 security guards heard children laughing and playing 1-2 a.m. in the morning, saw them, and then they vanished. And then they claimed to have had an encounter that terrified them so much that they called the site manager up. He came out 4 o'clock. The men were so terrified they wouldn't work anymore. He said, oh, well, we'd best get the police in. they called the police, and one of the officers jokingly said, well, if you're that scared, I think you need to see a vicar or a priest. So the following day at 11 a.m., the police officer that had made this flippant comment got a call from his boss saying, Deep Car Church have got an issue. And the guys had gone to the church and they wouldn't leave till the priest came. So came back with them. So in the end, they went back and they thought, yeah, we think somebody's pulling our legs. And 2 officers went up. Nothing much seemed to be happening. And just, they'd seen a couple of things like a piece of plastic flapping about in the wind. And they thought, oh, well, that's what scared these guys. And it's dark and it's lonely where they are. You know, despite the fact that both of them security guards were big, burly guys, you know, not the kind of men who would be frightened by a bit of flapping plastic. However, as they were about to leave, something started throwing stuff at their car. And then it sounded like somebody was attacking their car with a baseball bat.
Oh, God.
But there was nobody there at all. So as they're both sat in the car going, what the hell's going on? The car started, wouldn't work properly, kept cutting out. Light kept going on and off. So one of the officers looks, and as he's about to look, his colleague just starts screaming. So he looks like that and says, what's the matter? And then he turns back around and he starts screaming. And apparently what had happened was something had leaned into the car and looked them squarely in the face, both of them at opposite times. And both officers were absolutely petrified. Car started, they shot off, and it hit the headlines a couple of days later.
Really?
Yep.
What the hell did they say they'd seen?
They said they saw a man in old-fashioned clothing, not a monk. Let's just clarify that. And after that, there was loads of stories reported. Loads of stories. People running. One guy was training for the London Marathon. Him and his son saw something dragging a sack along a hill. Lorry went past. Gone.
Oh, Jesus.
Somebody was driving along the road. Couple saw somebody running across a field. This thing seemed to notice them watching it, so it started running towards them up the field and leapt in front of their car as they were driving on the bypass. And
Jesus Christ.
Vanished. So, yeah.
Wow, I had never heard of this. Although I have to know, why did they think an old man or a man in old clothes? Why was that scary?
I think it was the fact that, you know, there was nothing around there at all. There was no houses or anything. And the fact that he'd leant physically into the car. The windows were down and he'd leant into the car and looked at them in the face.
At 2:00 in the morning?
Yeah. You know, this is while the car's being banged and crashed and they hear all these weird noises and car won't start, the light keeps cutting out, and then the next thing, this fella's leaning in through the passenger, both the passenger and driver side windows. It did it to them both. So it did one, he screamed, the other one went, what? He looked, he screamed because it did it to him. So it basically flipped over.
Oh, man. Okay, and now I understand.
So, and they were thinking, is it somebody? So they got out, they were looking under the car. There was nowhere for anybody to be. They were in an area where you had complete sight all around. There was nowhere where they could possibly be there. They weren't under the car. They couldn't run off. They'd hear them. They'd see them in the wing mirrors or the mirror. So, yeah.
Holy shit. Wow. Okay. Well, that would do it.
Yes. And I've got the original recording of their interview.
Really?
Yeah, well, a copy of it.
Oh, I'll have to get that off you. I would be really interested to hear more about that.
Yes. Episode 38.
There we go. Check the link check the show notes.
The Ghosts of Stocksbridge Bypass. Yeah, it's a fascinating case. Sadly, it's one of those that seems to have developed a completely different mythology based on very poor investigations, shall we say. Right,
of course. Man, that happens so often. And then, of course, that's when the half-assed skeptics move in and start picking it all apart because, you know, the agreed-upon story is composed mostly of bullshit and angel fluff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's stuff like, oh, well, it was a monk that killed himself. There's no monastery in the area. There's no history of that. There's no record of that at all.
Fascinating. Those, you know, we had a message from Michael, who is a friend of the show, and he was talking about how we had shared that fellow's dream on a recent episode, how he had seen himself being loaded into an ambulance. And Michael was saying that those are airports. How did he describe it? I'm just going to find the message here. He says, airports and ambulances are both liminal space. Ambulances bring people in and out of the world of the living. Airports transport you. They're giant crossroads. So he thought that the idea that this would appear in someone's dream is not, it may not just be the thing it appears to be. That is likely a representation of something greater. So the person who had that dream. Thought you might be interested to know that. I know you'll be listening. And yeah. And so anyways, I wonder when I think about industrial spaces, right? Because I'm so fucking drawn to industrial spaces at night when they're empty. And I just wonder if that's because it's liminal space, right? If things come to empty places, things nest in empty places, and things can kind of come and go in those places. And I wonder if that's what they were witness to there. Something coming and going, or a place where things come and go.
Mm. Yeah, it's weird because there's no history of it around there at all. There's no folklore, there's no tradition. You know, I mean, it's isolated, but it's not. You know, it's isolated in the fact that it's a pain in the arse to get home from at 11 o'clock at night because it's a 30-minute car drive. But that's about it. You know, you're not hours away from civilization. You're like 20 minutes away and from the M1. But it's because I think it's because it's on the cusp of the Peak District, and after that, all bets are off.
Right, of course. Well, there was one time when my friend was sick in Vancouver a few years back, and I was spending a lot of time over there. When he was well enough to kind of tool around at night, go for car rides at night, we ended up in this one part of the city, and it's kind of the same way. It's tucked away in it's not a rural place. It's not a far away place. It just happens to be kind of tucked away. But I've got this one photograph of it, and it has haunted me to this day. There was something about that space that felt off. And I desperately wanted to get out, but at the same time, I knew that was an extremely bad idea. And so, again, I just wonder if there's something about certain places. It doesn't matter about what's been there before. It doesn't matter about the history. There's just a certain fragmentation there that makes it more likely to be home to this kind of activity.
It's often busy places as well, can sometimes feel quite eerie when you see them quieter. I remember a couple of years ago, I shared that documentary about London Underground with you, which for me is one of my favourite paranormal documentaries ever made. I've been on the London Underground late at night. It is a very, very strange place. If you drop on the right station or the wrong one, depending on your point of view, you can literally not see anybody or a handful of people, whereas 6 hours before, there are literally thousands of people. It's like being in an anthill trying to get anywhere. 5 hours later, handfuls. It's weird.
Yeah, that would be. That reminds me, have you seen the film Midnight Meat Train?
Yes, of course.
I quite like that. And it sort of kind of plays with that concept of these busy places having dual purposes, the latter of which, or the more shadowy of which, is only available or only visible at certain times of night. And to see it is maybe not a great idea, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Well, the London Underground as well has several ghost stations.
How do you mean?
So they're stations that have either been disused or just mothballed. And I think there's about a dozen of them. They're still there.
Okay.
But there's no line that runs through them. They don't go anywhere.
So is it possible to accidentally end up at one of those stations?
If you know the right ways to. I mean, I'm not advising anybody to start wandering around the London Underground tunnels late at night looking for it. But yeah, there's ways and means to find it. One of them used to be under the British Museum, which was supposedly haunted by an Egyptian queen.
Fascinating. Check the show notes for a lot of the stuff we're talking about. Our listeners have asked us to keep a running tally of the media we mentioned, things like movies, books, games, episodes of Mysteries and Monsters.
The tangents my head goes in.
Yes, which, frankly, I adore. To be quite honest, I love them. So, yeah, check the show notes for all that, and you can learn that there is a world going on underground. So this next story comes from Lindsay, and this one came in via the ghost line. So I have edited together the messages Lindsay left to present her story to you in her words. And then Paul and I will be back afterwards to talk about it. Take it away, Lindsay.
I, too, had a strong mental voice thing happen to me when I was 12, 13-ish. In 1995, I remember the day, June 16th, my family and I went through a very tragic thing. Basically, our house exploded. We went through a house explosion. So I was in grade 5, and I'm from Nova Scotia, obviously, and we went to the Highlands as a group overnight trip. I was up in the Highlands. I hardly had any sleep. We were all just rambunctious. We all were like 5 in a tent. And when I came home, I was exhausted. And this was around 7 p.m. at night on a Friday night. And I was like dead tired. What happened was I was watching TV down the basement. So my house was, the way to describe it was about 5 different levels. Because the first part of it was the basement and was built into under the ground, like a very old school style house in the 80s. So, and then we built up from there. So over the years, we just built on layers. So it kind of almost looked like a cat house, cat tree if you really think about it. So I'm downstairs in the lowest level, and I had this, it was my own voice, obviously, like, you know, your own train of thought and voice, but it was not of my thought pattern, if that makes any sense. Like how you were describing in your dream, like this overwhelming, something takes over you and just tells you what to do. So I turned the TV off and I went upstairs. I was starting to make my way up the stairs. The first level is the basement. And then we had like what we built onto was like a sunken living room. The living room is not on par with the kitchen. So I went to go lay down on the couch in the living room because I was just very tired. And also to add in, there was a propane leak in our house. So I was getting unintentionally high as a kite, like Snoop Dogg would have loved to feel the way I felt that day. And I went to go lay down on the couch, and I don't even know how to describe it. Just that inner voice told me, do not lay down on that couch. Don't you even dare. So it felt like something almost kind of unintentionally pushing me along, but not actual hands on me, but it just felt like this energy was pushing me along. So I'm like, okay. And then I dragged myself up the kitchen. The kitchen was like up another 2 steps, and I went to go stop, and it's like, don't you dare. Again, like this energy was kind of like pushing me. And then it said, tell your mom you're going to lay down. So I did. The way I was sitting on my bed was kind of like cross-legged, almost like in a yoga pose. And I felt like everything just dropped and everything was quiet and was like, now. Then my house exploded. I lived across the street from cows. Like we lived from a semi-popular farm. They had huge acres of field, but the field was across the road. So we had like rows of houses on one side and the cows were on the other side. So when the house exploded, it's not funny, but it's funny to think about, just the visual. My front door of my house had basically 3 different doors because of all the way we built it over the years. So the front door blew off from the explosion. I don't know if it hit the cows or whatever, but the cows were bucking out of there. The cows, for a solid month after house exploded, would not come near the road. Absolutely not. They're like, fuck you. The place where I was, like initially in the basement, was just sunken and crushed from the house just basically lifting up off its foundations and just crumbling down, coming straight down. And then the sunken living room and the kitchen completely gone. I was knocked out. My dad's a carpenter, and God bless him, but he almost killed me by accident. He made my closet doors, but they're so freaking heavy that when the closet door fell on me, it knocked me right straight out, and it even gashed my head. And when I came to, I was trying to get through my bedroom, but my bedroom was kind of messy as it was because I didn't undo all the packing from the campground. So I'm coming out of the bedroom of my bedroom, and my brother's in my mom's room, and then my poor mom, she's been like me fun of for years over this, but she did it to herself by accident. She was sitting using the bathroom, and this is 1995. This is like skinny jeans before they were skinny jeans. So my mom, the toilet actually bidetted itself up her, and she was trying to lift up, like trying to put her wet jeans on, and she thought my dad ran his truck into the house. Like she thought he just had a car accident, and she's screaming at him. He's on the other side of the house just witnessing the house explode. He's the only person on the outside. So my mom made a joke about this for many years because we just have dark humor. She used to say to my dad, like, you thought you got rid of me, and then I popped out of the bathroom. When we were getting exams done, I had to get in the hospital, and she worked at that hospital that we were admitted to. And when they did an x-ray on her, part of the porcelain fell out of her pants. Like, she was in so much shock. We're all in shock. She didn't even know she had a part of the toilet. And then eventually the local newspaper asked us where we all were. Mom can't lie to save her soul. She could have just said, I just happened to go into the bathroom. No, she told them exactly where she was and what happened. And I got made fun of in school. Like, it was me, but it was funny. But like, people were like, so instead of asking me if I was okay, most people were like, so your mom was on the toilet when the house exploded? And I'm like, yeah, it's true. Most people told me I was a ghost that wasn't really there. Like, that was really mean things to say to me. Like, obviously I wasn't. I had a pretty much near-death experience. I just remember when the house exploded, it just sounded like a gunshot, like a rifle went off. And I was looking across, because I had a window to that, like a fairly big window. But when the walls lifted, I thought, I'm seeing way more of the outside than I normally do, and I can't understand why. I was thinking the stupidest things. I thought, oh my God, Jesus is coming. And I'm like, I'm too young to die. I was like 12 years old and thinking I didn't even go to prom yet. Like, the things I was thinking of as far as I would turn to 18 kind of thing. And I just remember that was my last thoughts before the house, because I was looking to the outside where the windows were, and then the closet door fell on me, and that's knocked me clear out. So I had the worst of it. I had a head injury from it. We had our local fire department, obviously for home insurance. They took lots of pictures. They took lots of video, and I don't know why my mom tortured everyone, because we used to, obviously this was like 1995. Everyone that came visit, they're like, want to see the house explosion aftermath video? And it played it all the time. And I would just melt down and freak out because I didn't like the stuff. Because once it got up to the upstairs level where I was, my brother, my mom, there's just pools of my blood from my head injury. Like, I had a significant amount of blood loss. They told me I lost almost up to 2 liters of blood. That's how big it was. And to end it off, a lot of things happened, obviously, when I was a kid. But one of the biggest things that happened to me that night that I remember so vividly was trying to sleep. And I'm so glad my best friend's mom, she volunteered to work with me, even though the nurse said, you're not on shift. She's like, I have to stay with her because she's my daughter's best friend. So I don't know if you ever experienced that where you're sleeping and it feels like you're about to hit the ground, you wake up, your whole body shakes you awake. I had that on at least every hour, if not more, that night I tried to sleep. And I kept saying how cold I was, and Marlene was such a doll. She found me more blankets because she worked in the hospital, so she knew where everything was, and really watched over me and comforted me when I had those kind of moments too.
All right. Well, thank you, Lindsay, for that story. That is, holy shit. Talk about a guardian angel. I have never heard a story that involves the phrase, and then my house exploded.
I've got some strange experiences on my resume, but I'm severely lacking in comparison with Lindsay's experience there. That's the kind of thing that I would expect to be a line in Dodgeball. I've seen the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and I've been in a house explosion. I mean, whatever was on your side that night, fair play to him. Because if it hadn't, you'd have probably been killed.
That's what it sounds like. It's just absolutely incredible. And Lindsay was referring to the episode she was referring to was Call of Dreams, where we talked about that sort of sense of being like, just feeling like you shouldn't be somewhere. Feeling like, you know what, it's time to go. I shouldn't be here anymore.
Yeah.
And that, I think, may be the most dramatic example of that I've ever seen. Because Jesus, and I got to say, how savage are kids? Oh, your house blew up. Are you dead? You little motherfucker.
I have to say that really made me laugh. When you say, are you a ghost? Yeah, I'll come and haunt your ass. Now shut up.
Right? I survived an explosion. I am Jack Reacher. You should not be trying to piss me off. I cannot die. You, on the other hand, there is no data to suggest that you have such longevity. Perhaps you should pay me some respect.
Yeah, it's an incredible story, full of wonderful nuggets, like her dad's such a good carpenter that he made her closet door so heavy they knocked her unconscious.
Yeah. And there's some other great stuff that I'll send you separately, but I had to cut it for time. But her neighbor, she had a neighbor who had been in the war, and he had some kind of concoction for getting blood out of your hair. And apparently her hair was just soaked through with blood, so he made some of this concoction and used it to get all the blood out of her hair. Which, I mean, that would be an alarming thing to find out that my neighbor knew. No, I know how to get blood out of hair. Yeah. Come on over. We'll sort you right out.
When you have a cut on your head as well, it can be quite worrying, primarily because your blood flow is so close to your skull that it always looks a lot worse than it actually is, speaking from experience.
Oh, yeah. Well, multiple head wound, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I've still got those 2 pieces of glass stuck in my skull.
Pieces of glass. Do I know this story?
It's the unbreakable light bulb that wasn't unbreakable.
No, I don't think I know this story.
So many years ago, we were having a game of hide and seek with cap guns, like pop guns, like bang,
Sure,
bang.
yeah.
And we may have ingested some plant-based enjoyment.
I see.
So we were very relaxed and having fun. And we were in one of the pubs I ran. And so we were hiding around the pub.
You're an adult doing this.
Oh,
I
yeah,
thought
yeah,
you were
yeah.
a fucking kid. Okay.
Oh, no,
okay.
I was 21. So we were hiding like a spy film, like sneaking around, looking around all the corners in the cellar, and you're like, oh. And I went round this corner, and one of the guys who we were living with in the pub, he'd hidden, and I had not seen him. And he sneaked up behind me, and he went, bang! And I literally jumped off the floor, absolutely bricked it, and I jumped about 4 foot in the air, and I went, bang! Straight into one of these massive unbreakable light bulbs. Well, they're not unbreakable. The frame around it, and it was a big old bulb, and the plastic, and it just went boom! And I just landed, and I went, ooh, blooming heck. And then the next thing, all I could see was red.
Oh, no.
And there were chunks of light bulbs stuck in my head.
Oh, God.
And my mate says, right. And he just ran it off. And then he came back with this really shitty towel and wrapped it around my head. And then he went, right, we're going to the hospital. And I went to the hospital. And I'm sat there, and they've had spray all this stuff to numb my scalp and everything. And
Right.
the doctor said, well, I have to say, obviously we didn't say, oh yeah, we were playing stoned hide and seek with cap guns, I said, yeah, no, but there was a loud noise in the cellar. It made me jump. And he just went, oh, well, you seem all right. And I'll tell you something, it's a good job you're going bald, because we'd be here ages if not.
So he's like, that story's bullshit, and here's my revenge.
Yeah. And there we have it. But unfortunately, there was I think at the time there was about 7 pieces left. And he just said, oh, well, they'll just come out naturally. And I had 1 piece sort of come out in my arm, because apparently your body moves it round.
Really?
Yeah, because obviously you're only, your skin's, your cells regenerate. So it moves it about. And I had 1 come out my arm, I had 2 or 3 come back out my head, but I've still got 2 pieces still in there.
Imagine if 1 came out your pecker.
Well, I think I'd know about it before it got there.
I guess so. Yeah. I was like, wow, what if? Anyway, sorry. That was a very strange question.
But yeah, so that was very interesting. So I'm with Lindsay here about blood loss through a head wound.
Wow. Well, I can't say I'm sorry that I don't have a similar story.
I only had 6 stitches as well.
Is that it?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad really in the end scheme of things. It hurt a lot. I think I had a concussion for a bit.
Well, I think Lindsay got you beat there. As I recall, the stitches were substantial.
Yeah. And I wasn't unconscious, and So I'm not saying my story compares to it, but I'm just comparing blood loss through a head wound. It looks a lot worse than it is.
I love it. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing this with us. We're so glad you're still here. Lindsay also shares a lot of awesome memes that I post on our Instagram. And if you want to call the Ghost Line, you want to leave a story like Lindsay did, 1-888-588-6920 is the number to call. You can leave your story as one or a series of voicemails, and then I'll stitch them together as I have done in this case. Again, that's 1-888-588-6920 if you want to call the Ghost Line.
No, you'll be hard-pressed to top Lindsay's amazing story. That's fabulous, especially the added bonus of the frightened cows.
I love this job, Paul.
It's amazing. To hear stories like that, that's fabulous. Our last entry is from Mainardo. I just listened to this episode and have a few things to share. I'm not married and never have been, but I have dreamt many times that I have a wife and a kid. This started several years ago. I don't recall much detail, but I dreamt that I met a lovely woman. A couple of years later, I dreamt that we were holding our newborn son. I was so very happy to be a father, but when I woke up, I felt very sad. A few years later, I dreamed that my little family and I were moving to a different city, and in the dream my mother was kissing my son goodbye. We got in an older white Mustang and headed out. I have seen my dream family a few more times since, all in very mundane situations, but they, meaning my family, are older. Each time, my son has grown up a few years, but is not exactly the same rate of time as in real life. My wife looks older, but still beautiful. It always leaves me a little sad. Could it be my mind fulfilling my desire to have a family? I'm not sure, but it seems beyond my mind and comprehension. You mentioned the book, Devil's Highway. I have also read that book. Yes, travelling the desert along the border has to be done carefully. I live north of San Diego, California, so I am close to that area. I often go take photos at night out in the backcountry alone, and yes, I am very wary of being out there. I have not had any encounters with humans, and I hope to keep it that way. But I have had some supernatural type interactions. When I travel, often an owl will accompany me. It will fly along my truck long enough for me to see it, and then vanish. One time I was out there at 3 a.m. I was parked along a road that's fairly well used during the day, but rarely at night. As I was waiting for my camera to finish a long exposure shot, I saw in the darkness over a field to my left, form in the sky. I looked over and saw the shadowy form of the owl flying from my location, northwards parallel to the road. It was flying towards a stand of oaks, up about 100 yards up on the road. At the same time, from farther north, a car was heading down the road in my direction. Nothing too odd happens, but as I reached the tree stand at the same time as the owl swooped down, and I must describe it as such, attacked the windshield of the car. I could see the shape of the owl's wings wide open, claws out, silhouetted by the headlights. The owl was not hurt, but I saw it maneuver about the windshield for several seconds before it flew away. Being Mexican means deep down I still have some teaching and belief from Native American culture. I suddenly knew that the owl was protecting me for whomever was in that car. I grabbed my camera and left as soon as possible. Another time I was out doing the same in a different area near a field with cattle. All was good for a while, and then the cattle started to act up. These were cows with calves, and suddenly they started to call to each other. Very far in the distance, I could hear a couple of coyotes yipping, so I assumed that was the cause for the commotion. A few minutes later, I heard the owl calling out. I got the feeling it was telling me it was time to go. I decided to ignore it, because I had not been there very long. The owl insisted a bit more when a coyote yipped much closer than before. Everything went very quiet all of a sudden. No cows, no owl, no coyotes. All of a sudden, from the direction the coyote had yipped, but now closer, I heard clear as day the word moo. Not the sound of a cow, but the word moo. I threw my camera into my truck and got the hell out of Dodge. I knew I should have listened to that owl when it told me to leave.
Man, Mainardo, thank you so much. Mainardo's a longtime listener, and thank you for sharing that. There is a lot happening in those stories. I honestly, we could probably spend a whole episode just talking about those various things. I kind of would like to start with the dream, though, because that, as someone who loves dreams, and of course we're still prepping a future dream episode, another dream episode, I am obsessed by this notion of other lives in dreams. I remember we had actually another longtime listener, Jay. He wrote in back in 2017, and I found the email here. I'm just going to read a portion of it. I've been getting these odd visions over the last couple of years, and I'm pretty sure you haven't discussed this kind of thing on the podcast yet. I'm a dad to 3 amazing kids. I'm not sure how many other boys my age were into family planning, but since I was about 7, I had decided I was going to have 3 kids. Back in 2014, their mom and I divorced. Shortly after this, I found myself doing the single dad thing, trying to enjoy my time with them, but struggling with a greater level of responsibility. Every now and then, I'd experience a flash of panic. It'd be at a crowded event where I'd suddenly be hit with a few seconds of terror. One of my kids was missing. Except they weren't missing. I had all 3 with me. But for a brief moment, I believed I had a 4th kid. I had shrugged the feeling off the first time. Maybe I was overwhelmed by the responsibility of keeping track of 3 very independent children solo. But the feeling has come back a few times since then. Then the other day, my birthday, I woke up from a very vivid dream where I had to rescue my young daughter from a locked room. She obviously wasn't one of my real-life daughters, but could it be this mystery kid that I've been panicking over? I should note it's pretty unusual for me to have dreams this vivid. And we went around the dance floor with that a few times back in the day. And of course, as I mentioned, Jay is a longtime listener of the show and still listens. He's a patron. But I'm fascinated by this notion of other lives that we only have very brief insight into. The fact that Mainardo felt sad after waking up and like he misses them.
Mm.
I don't think that's necessarily something you can dismiss as a dream. And I mean, maybe it's just me wanting the world to be more complex than I think it is, but I do wonder if there is something to that, this notion that, there's that spring, I've said this before, but one of my misheard lyrics is that Bruce Springsteen song, The River. And the lyric goes, "Is a dream a lie if it don't come true?" And when I was a kid, I had a bootleg copy of Springsteen's Greatest Hits on cassette. That's really all I had for music at the time. And I always thought he said, "Is a dream a life that don't come true?"
Mm.
And it just knocked into my head this idea of other lives and dreams. And so when Mainardo wrote that in, I thought, Jesus, that really just twigs that thing. And you wonder if there is another version of him out there that lived that life and that is living that life.
I can categorically say I've never dreamt of weddings or children or different things. Yeah, never, ever.
Interesting.
I still don't recall many that I have currently, even though, the last 18 months, 2 years is a whole new world of dreaming for me. But I never had that even as a child or anything. I never dreamt of things. I always dreamt of other lives, but not so much in a traditional setting or a family unit. It was more sort of whisking around the world, doing weird things rather than having a family and stuff. And I'm not really sure. So it's a strange thing, but I think anybody that's had a very vivid dream, even if they don't accept the reality of what the dream is telling them, or they don't have that hope or that longing in their waking life, I think clearly that the brain is such an interesting thing that I'm not surprised that you would have an emotional response to it regardless, because at the end of the day, the brain is what powers your emotions. And therefore, whether you want that or not, I would imagine you would still wake up with some kind of emotional response to it, even though you hadn't been awake whilst you were having that experience.
Moving on from that, what do you think about the owls?
Well, owls do symbolize a lot of things to a lot of people in certain aspects of the paranormal. A lot of them see them as guardians or protecting spirits, or the sort of embodiment of a protection spirit, I think. I think sometimes with situations like that, you perhaps maybe have to be careful about over-analysing an animal's appearance in a strange situation.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not sure you could perhaps, if you looked hard enough, you could see things about crows or magpies or deer or some other kind of creature that symbolises something to somebody.
Right.
But there certainly seems to be, often owls are often depicted as guardians, when it comes to incidents of high strangeness. I was speaking with Zelia Edgar recently, and one of the cases we were talking about featured an incident with an owl that seems to attract the attention of some aliens that are trying to get somebody who's hiding up a tree from them.
Okay.
And the witness ended up developing PTSD from owl hoots. And even though the owl hooting wasn't part of the incident that was frightening him, it just, hearing the owl hoot would always remind him of this incident he'd had with these two strange creatures trying to clamber up a tree to get him.
Oh, wow.
But he was looking, one of the things he thought was perhaps that the owl was trying to get them away from him and garner their attention.
Oh, interesting.
Which once again falls into this protector or guardian aspect of the owl mythos.
I do think it's noteworthy that he felt uncomfortable in the space and sort of pushed through it. And I got to tell you, in those situations, that's never a good idea. If you think, I feel like I should go, even though you're thinking to yourself, shit, I just got here, just go. Just go. Always listen to that voice. Again, I've been in that position a number of times. You think, oh man, I just got here. But it's always a good idea to listen. I remember there was one time I was shooting out in Shawnigan Lake one night at the crossroads. And it was late, about 11 o'clock, midnight, maybe about around that time. And I was there with a friend of mine. And this mist had moved in. So I thought, oh, perfect. I'm going to get these creepy shots of the Shawnigan crossroads at nighttime. And all of a sudden, in an instant, something shifted. I felt it. And I thought, no, I'm sure it's fine. Look, I just got out here. I haven't really got set up yet. Then my friend called me from across the car. And they said, hey, you felt that, right? I kind of went, yeah. They said, we got to go right now. And I don't know. That's the annoying thing, right? It's the annoying thing of listening to the voice is you never know what, if anything, you avoided by moving. That's the problem with being Cassandra, right? Because you warn everyone. But unless the thing happens, they've got no reason to believe you were right. But yeah, in this particular case, Mainardo, well, one, I'm glad you left. And two, yeah, I think when that happens, especially if you're going to be out taking shots at night in those kinds of places, as someone who does this, listen to the voice, because the voice fucking knows.
Yeah, but not the voice that says moo.
Holy Christ.
I've heard that a few times in paranormal incidents where something distinctly human-like will make the noise of an animal, and you clearly know it's not an animal.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
So yeah, go with the gut, get out there, and fast.
Briefly, I think it's important for so many things to listen to that instinct, whether it's a situation or people in a situation. If something in you says, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore, listen. Jesus Christ, just listen. Don't let people use social pressure to keep you in that situation, because that happens, especially if you're with people who have ill intentions for you. They will use every fucking trick in the book to try and keep you around, keep you local. They'll kind of lean on that sense of, oh, well, they're going to be embarrassed I'm going to be embarrassed if you leave early. Fuck them. If that voice tells you to go, go. Do not stick around. Do not let anyone suggest otherwise. On that note, we're gonna close it out. That was another round of fantastic listener stories. Thank you to everyone who wrote in. Again, if you've got a story you want to share, ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. We will do our best to get it on either the main show or our Book of the Dead mini shows that are released every other week. So you get a main show on the Tuesday that this comes out, and then a week from today, you'll get Book of the Dead Volume 3, and so on and so forth. And those are just short little mini shows, 10 to usually 20 minutes, and all stories, no chat. And so if we can't get your story on the main show, we will do our best to get it over there. Again, that's ghoststoryguys@gmail.com or the Ghost Line, which we'll talk about after this break.
I was found here. You come around here. How can I say now? Never for me now.
Hey there, listeners. Before you reach for that skip 15 seconds ahead button, I promise you this isn't an ad. we wanted to take a minute to talk to you about mental health. On this show, I've always tried to be as honest and open as possible about my struggles with depression and anxiety, because even though we've come a long way towards acknowledging the very real damage these things can do, there is still way too much lingering stigma about reaching out for help. And when you start to feel like there's no help, it's easy to start feeling like there's no hope. But Paul has joined me today to remind you there is always hope and there's always help.
We're not going to try and talk you out of self-harming right now, because we know that's not how it works. Instead, what we wanted to do was tell you something now and hope that should things get bad, you'll remember it and make a phone call or send a text message before you make any permanent decisions. As someone who knows all too well just how important mental health can be, it's never too late to reach out.
In Canada, the number to call is 133-456-4566. In the USA, the number to call is 1-800-273-8255.
In the UK, the number to call is 116-123 or text SHOUT, that's SHOUT, to 85258. In Australia, the number to call is 131114.
However bad shit seems, it will pass. And no matter what your brain might be telling you at any given moment, and believe me when I say I know this intimately, there are people who love you and people who care deeply about how you treat yourself. Should a time come when you find yourself despairing, please know that we've both been where you are, and there is a way back to the world. Take care. Welcome back. Thanks as always to Luke, Anthony, Sarah, and Joseph, and everyone else who's part of the Ghost Story Guys family. Don't forget to check out Luke's podcast, Luke Lore, available on podcast platforms everywhere. And don't forget to check out In Search of Ghosts, which you can find on YouTube and linked in the show notes. Thanks, of course, to my friend and co-host, the paranormal Johnny Carson, Paul Bestel, host of Mysteries and Monsters. What's coming up next on M&M, Paul?
I have got Adam Benedict from the Pine Barrens Institute discussing his wonderful and extremely heavy book, Oddities in Print. Finally got a chance to speak with Zelia Edgar from Just Another Tinfoil Hat, who is a fabulous up-and-coming researcher of Achillean slant. So we talk about high strangeness in regards to a variety of strange cases as well. And,
fascinating.
And a few other interesting things, including a big hitter from the UFO community that I've wanted on since episode 1, and I've finally got him. So I'm really looking forward to that episode. So that's what's coming up on Mysteries and Monsters in the next few weeks.
Fabulous. And where can everyone find you online?
You can find us by searching for Mysteries and Monsters across all social media platforms, YouTube, and where all good podcasts live.
Fantastic. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Largely the Truth, and you can find my interview podcast, Largely the Truth with Brennan Storr, also wherever podcasts live, both fine and not so fine. My most recent episode, I talked to the recording artist Ash Devine, and it is a really great fucking conversation. Ash and I met in a hostel in Casablanca 14 years ago, and we had not spoken since then. And so now that he was not a recording artist back then, he was a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very polite, very quiet young man who had a very, very interesting outlook on things. We had great conversations, the kind you only have with strangers you meet in hostels. But he has grown into such an assured, confident artist. And his latest record is called The Sex Issue, and it is wild. So if you want to check that out, again, Largely the Truth with Brendan Storr on podcast platforms everywhere. And you can find me at largelythetruth.com or on the social media places I have already mentioned. And you and I recorded a guest spot on a podcast. That will not be out until, I think, the end of next month. We were guests of the TV trivia podcast with Brian Sheehan, answering questions about the Avengers.
The greatest film ever made.
We'll go with that. I'm not going to fight you on this. And I think we acquitted ourselves very well. Obviously, we're not going to spoil it, but I think we put on a pretty good showing.
Yes, even Thanos couldn't have stopped us.
No, sir. All right. And at the top of the show, of course, I mentioned if you want to become a patron, you can head on over to patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. That's patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. You get access to all our bonus shows like Host Adventures, Book of the Dead, Sunken Library, Me and Paul. We're actually recording our next episode of Me and Paul on Thursday, and that's going to be our Q&A show. It's probably going to be ridiculously long, as it usually is. And if you sign up by the time you hear this, you'll still have a couple days to get questions into us. But again, you can find all of that at patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. There's also things like physical rewards, ringtones. At higher levels, you get monthly Zoom calls, all kinds of stuff. Again, that's patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. And if you're a patron at $20 and above, you get a very special honor. An honor we have not been able to properly show until today, because illness and long recording times made it impossible.
No, COVID made my throat feel like I was swallowing razors for about 3 weeks. So
yeah, so we just didn't want to aggravate things. But now, today, here is a triumphant return of Ghost Force. That's right. Patrons at $20 and above are part of the elite club that is Ghost Force and get a shout out every second episode here, in this segment, in these voices, in front of God and all his angels. Those were the angels. This time around, the members of Ghost Force are Atham Saragon,
Amanda Jenks,
Amanda Strong,
April Bowers,
Beth Hansen,
Cheryl Baker,
Dylan Sedlasik,
Hannah Brown,
Hannah Siemens,
Jackie McFarland,
Jade Moores,
Jason R. Slaughter,
Slaughter, Jeanette Patterson,
Jennifer Mullen,
Joseph Como,
Julia Lugubrious,
Just Julie,
Jenner Blackwelder,
Kimberly Hansen,
Mara Noriega,
Mark Semler,
Mary Rose W.W.,
Peter Guns 08.5,
Rebecca Brink,
Rhonda Sheen.
Richard Easby.
You are the few. You are the proud. You are the spooky. You are Ghost Force. For real, guys, thank you so much for being part of Ghost Force. You're all nuts, and we love you for it. Your generosity is unbelievable, and we just deeply appreciate it. And that's why we torture our vocal cords for you here every other episode. And again, if you want to have your name read out as part of Ghost Force, that's at patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. Don't forget, if you've got a story to share, ghoststoryguys@gmail.com is a place to send it. Or you can call us on the Ghost line at 1-888-588-6920. Again, that's 1-888-588-6920. And you can leave your story as one or a series of voicemails, just like Lindsay did, and we'll do our best to get it in the show. If you want to pick up some Ghost Story Guys merch, we've just added a great new design to our TeePublic store. You'll find a link to that in the show notes. And if you do buy something, if you want to send us a picture of you wearing it, we'll happily put it up on our social media. We love seeing you guys wearing our gear, and we appreciate the hell out of every single person who buys something. It's always cool to know that's out there. And again, our most recent design is called Making Dead Look Good, and that was designed by UK artist Mike Harmon. Again, you'll find a link to our TeePublic store in the show notes or at our website, ghoststoryguys.com. Leave us a 5-star review anywhere you can. It helps bump our numbers. Tell your friends about the show. That's really the best way for us to grow, is through word of mouth. So if you enjoy what we do here, tell your friends about us, and hopefully we can share a little bit of that joy and attract some new ears to what we're doing. Finally, our theme song, Radio, Into the Darkness We Go, is composed and performed by Peter of Pizzanta Music. Find more from him by going to nightharvestrecordings.com or by searching for Pizzanta Music wherever you get your tunes. Our story's theme is The Future Belongs to Them Now by Hexagram. Find more from them by searching for Hexagram wherever you get your music. Again, that's Hexagram with 2 X's, not 3. And I guess that's going to do it.
We'll be back with a new episode in a couple of weeks. But until then,
Into the darkness we go. It's like us saying a recording's going well. We have to immediately correct ourselves or it's all going to go to shit. Oh, it's beautiful up here. No, come back, Gerald. Come back. Don't go. Don't go.
Stay away from the light.
But the sun.
It's not the sun.
The sun calls to me. Wow, that got dark. I'm going to have to start brushing up on my slang.
They're really gnarly.
Oh, boy. We're in trouble.
Bodacious. Bear. Bear's a good word I learnt off some kids recently. Well, not recently. It's probably when we were allowed to be in public. If somebody's bear thirsty, it means they're really randy. Really?
I've heard, I know thirsty. I did not know bear thirsty.
Bear means
Is
very.
Is it B-E-A-R or B-A-R-E, or do we know?
I didn't ask for the syntax. I just.
All right, now let me break this down here. Hang on. What kind of sociologist are you?
Yeah, so bear means very. Why are you reading?
Yeah, you're a reader?
You're a reader boy.
Did you see the recent? I don't know if you're not as on. I hopefully you're not as online as I am in stupid ways. But you know, when I'm trying to avoid my brain, I spend a lot of time on Twitter. And there was this one dildo who said something like, "If you're reading a book in a bar, know that we all hate you." And I thought, what is it with people who have an issue with this? I once brought a book into the bar in Revelstoke, and this great bastard walked over to me and said, "What you reading for?" You know, it was. Oh no, sorry, no, that was Bill Hicks. He said, "Who reads in a bar?" So 20 years later, these fucking schmucks, it's the same shit. I don't want to read at home. I'm bored. The coffee shops are all closed. Shut up and just go slowly drink yourself to death without bothering me, would you?
Yeah. I think due to the books I normally read in public, nobody dare fucking approach me. The fuck's Boggy Creek?
Yeah, my Jodi Picoult novels make me an easy target. Mr. Darcy's a treasure. You don't appreciate him.
Life is just a concept that we are caged by.
And I know why the caged bird sings. My wife just sees me on the couch going like...
I feel myself a god. Light and sound emanate from me.
I can hear the truth of the universe in my bones. My rib cage is a xylophone across which time plays a rhythm.
I can even hear the tune of the grass growing.
Listen.
Do you hear it?
Beautiful. I feel the warmth of the universe. No, you peed. Wake up. Come on. Of course, we cannot use any of this, but that's okay. Laro, don't judge us. Don't judge me. Paul hasn't said anything objectionable. Don't judge me, Laro.
I just say my objectionable things very quietly. I'm always cursing in Wiccan.
You're just jabbing a voodoo doll of me slightly off camera. Turns out if you walk in a place wearing a shirt emblazoned with your podcast logo long enough, people start asking questions. Imagine the hubris. You fucking idiot.
As if anybody's got a recording of that. Ta-da!
God damn it.
He's the Uri Geller of ufology. That's it. It's all right. One of my cats is pretending it's recreating The Exorcist and is shaking the door.
Let me in so I can leave again.